pretty close by, right, in Atlantic Beach?
Yeah, I grew up just a few miles north of here, a block and a half from the ocean. Love the ocean. Fishing, surfing, scuba diving. Got a great family. My father was in the Navy for 20 years. He retired here in Mayport. I got brothers and sisters from Maine to Key West born. So my father was all up and down the coast. But I ended up here, and that's where he retired here.
And you're the youngest of 7, right?
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 7. Just being blessed with a good family. My father was a good church going man. Matter of fact, we went to St. Paul's Catholic Church over here. It was a good family upbringing. You know, we had dinner every night, sit down dinner, prayer, and we all sat and ate dinner. And that was a blessing. Younger family.
And kind of through, you went to Fletcher High School and graduated and then started work?
Yeah, I graduated in '84. But when I was in the 7th grade, or 8th grade, I was 15, and my father got sick. And he was in the hospital, had open heart surgery, and I remember my mom coming into my room on my 16th birthday. You don't have to go to school today. Your father passed away on your birthday. So that was the start of a long journey for me. I turned to my brother Patrick. He was kind of like a mentor to me. And so my father always told me to graduate high school. You're not going to be nothing without a graduation. So in his honor, I finished high school. I didn't drop out or nothing like that. Wasn't the greatest at school. I found out later that I had dyslexia, so Fletcher never picked up on that. That'll come back around in my story.
But you experienced, so obviously your father passing was, I guess you were about 16, and then you experienced some other pain or other death as well around that time.
Yeah, I turned to my brother Patrick, and because I'd lost my father and we were real close, and within a year he was working for the shipyard because my father had gotten everybody into good jobs. My oldest brother did to the post office, which was a good job back then. He still works for the post office. My other brother to medical school, my sister to cooking school, Patrick to the shipyards, my brother to welding school. And when I turned 16 and getting ready to graduate, that's when he died. So I was left to turn to my brother Patrick, who got me a job in landscaping. And so within a year, I got the call on the radio at the truck that everybody come back to the nursery now. Your brother Patrick just fell dead on the ship. He was working and had an aneurysm and just fell dead right there on the ship. So the person I turned to died again, from my father to my brother. And I had graduated working, and it was detrimental to me. I shut down, and that's when I turned to alcohol. And working, I still did pretty good there.
Right. And I know about 10 years later, your sister also passed, right?
Yeah. Through that time, I was drinking and just didn't care much. I kind of met my wife in between there, and we got married. We were at a house in Atlantic Beach, and we were doing really well. And my mom went to pick up my sister, and they said she had blood work and come back 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. My mom went and picked her up, and she walked out to the car and fell dead right there on the driveway. She had ovarian cancer so bad it just killed her right there. So that was another loss. But I had my wife, so it wasn't that bad, but I had somebody to turn to.
And you were married 10 years, right, to Terry? And and so you enjoyed that time together. Tell us a little bit about your marriage, and then how how things.
We were married. She worked at Publix. I was still landscaping, and we were doing really well. We do Bible studies at night. Everything was going good. And I lost my sister, but I had my mom and everybody else. And about 2 years into our marriage, and my mom got sick. And after my sister fell dead, and she did 4 bouts of cancer, from her intestines to her lungs to her liver back to her intestines. And we ended up finally calling hospice in for her. Me and my brothers took a turn walking her each time she had surgery. The first thing they said, get her up, get her moving. So we all grouped together and supported my mom, go to the hospital. Each of us would take a shift, get her up and get her moving. And 3 times she came home, and the cancer came back. And the 4th time they said they couldn't do nothing else. They had done everything they could. So they brought in hospice, and then my mom ended up dying. And in that time, it was tough, but I still had my wife to lean on, and from there, we were going to have a child, and she was 6 months pregnant, and the child blew a hole in his heart, and they had to take the child, and that was really detrimental to my wife and to me again, another death. And she took it hard. She started drinking again. When I met her, I quit drinking for 10 years, but she pulled out of it. So it was a tough time.
Right. So you experienced, obviously a lot of pain in your past. You were kind of working through some of that, but there was something that really kind of broke, right? And that was a really turning point, kind of in your life.
And shortly after that, my wife was sick, and so we finally got her to the hospital, and she had pneumonia, and the pneumonia turned into a blood infection, and she could not. They instantly induced her into a coma, and they tried to fight the blood infection, and she could not. Her blood infection would not allow her blood to carry oxygen to the rest of her body. And from there, she lasted 4 days without no oxygen to her body. The brain will keep your internal organs alive, but she started rotting from her fingers and her toes from lack of oxygen because her body was just trying to keep itself alive. And she finally died, and that was my turning point. I left the house. Matter of fact, I started drinking again right after that because that was my lifeline there. And it was tough. I sat in the house for a week and just started drinking. My sister-in-law came over with the cops to make sure I was still alive. And they found out I was still alive, and finally I just couldn't take it no more. I got up and walked off. I went to the woods. I didn't want nothing no more. I just wanted to die because I'd lost so much, and I couldn't take it. Turned my back on God, said no more. I just went to the woods to die, to drink myself to death.
So that kind of started your kind of a pattern of homelessness for about 6 years. Where did you end up living? Because it was here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I was living in the woods off of Beach Boulevard and 295. I lived under a tree. I'd panhandle money, fly a sign to get a little bit to eat, mostly to drink, because I planned on drinking myself to death. And just didn't care. Didn't want God. I was mad at God. He was taking everything from me so many times that I couldn't trust him no more. I just gave up and walked away.
And so that was a period of about six years. You and I met about a year and a half ago. Kind of where did they find you before we?
I ended up having a seizure in the woods, and actually I was close to Walgreens, and they picked me up in an ambulance, and they took me to the hospital, and they had told me about a treatment center at the pavilion, yeah, and I got there and still was planning on going back to the woods. Had nowhere to go. I just didn't want nobody, and that's where I met Mark here.
I remember you. I remember you walking, and you had a shirt that said, what did the shirt say?
I don't remember.
I remember Kenny. He was very humble. We ended up hitting it off right away. So from the pavilion, how did you get into Beach's Rescue Recovery? Kind of what was that transition?
From there, I met Mark, and who is my brother now, and his mom has adopted me as her son. So that's a great part of the story. And I've made a friend, and through that, we connected really well. And he told me about the Beach's Rescue Recovery Mission. And I was like, I'd give it a shot. It would be a place to stay for a while, get out of the woods for a little bit, get maybe a little healthy, and I'll go back to the woods. That was the game plan.
So we went to. I called Jimbo up and I said, hey, I've got a friend who needs some help. So we went, and that was the first time you met Jimbo, I think Bowen and Russ, right?
Yes, that was the first time, and we sat down and had an interview, and I gave him my testimony, and I didn't, like I said, I said, oh God, I'm not really, and I still hadn't learned how to love again, because when I shut down, I didn't want nobody, no love, no nothing. He said it was just going to be a stopping point for me to have a break and not care.
So that was about a year and a half ago. Tell us about your journey now, because that was really, it turned out to be a turning point for you, right? And so maybe describe what you've learned over the past year.
From there, with the teachings of the Bible, through the mission, they were teaching me that God is love. And I'm like, so through the teachings of all the pastors that come and go, I started to open up a little bit, and I wrote a story about a hermit crab. I was like a hermit crab. When pain hit me, I'd just go in my shell and not come out. And through the love of Jimbo and the mission, and Mark had told me there was a coffee shop there, and I'm a landscaper. I do everything with my hands, and I'm like, me in a coffee shop? Never happened. That's the last thing on my mind is a coffee shop. But through the mission, I got to know everybody at the coffee shop, and the love there, and the love of the mission. It just pulled me right out of my shell. And through Marcia, Tammy, and all the backing of the Cup of Job, and the love of the mission, I started coming out of my shell and learning how to love again, and accepting love, because I didn't even love myself. It was a slow journey. I would help the Cup of Job just walk by and pull in the chairs. I wouldn't even talk to it. You want a cup of coffee? No. And I would help, but I never asked for anything. And because when I was younger, my father would say, there's a lawnmower, you want something, go work for it. Which was good, because I learned a good work ethic. But to be able to ask people for things, I would never do that.
So through that process, you also learned to love God again, right? And you got baptized?
Yeah, and to be able to accept love, and it just grew in the last year and a half to where my motto was, the woods are not an option. Me and Mark did Bible studies every morning, and we finally came that I said, well, I'm thinking about going back. Well, we got to make a promise that the woods are not an option. So I made a promise to him and God, because God was moving on me, learning how to love again, having friends, depending on people, accepting gifts from people, because I was so down that I didn't want anything from anybody, couldn't trust nobody. But through the love of the mission and the Cup of Job, it brought me out, and it was great. And then God started moving on me and teaching me how to love and accept it.
Right. We spent a lot of time in the first part of your journey really talking about the woods. What did the woods represent to you at that time? You know, what was drawing you to say, hey, maybe I should go back to the woods, because that was a struggle, right?
Yeah, it was a struggle because I shut down so much that that's the only place I could go and just, just not have the stress of the world working, I could just lay under a tree and drink and be miserable. And it was drawing me back. I guess it was the devil trying to pull me back to the woods. But the love of God and the love of everybody at the mission and the Cup of Job just conquered that out. So I came up with a new motto, moving forward with God. And I'm on that journey now.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things we talked a lot about was being unoffendable, right? And working through that. I know we actually went through the book by Brandon Hanson. What did you learn through that?
There's a lot of good scripture in there that if I'm offended, I'm wrong, and Jimbo preaches a lot about that too. So, and learning about myself and humbling myself to not be offended at God. That's who I was most offended at. But I'm moving forward with God now. It's just an amazing trip.
So it's great, right? You over this past 6 months, really it's shifted to say, hey, I'm moving forward with God, which is a great thing. What does that look like for you right now? About last August, you graduated from the program. What is life like for you right now?
Right now, I finished the program, but I have a job now. I work full time. I volunteer just about every day except Monday, the Cup of Job. I open and close there. I do flowers all around the mission. I mean, it gives me a sense of purpose, and a place that I can call home, not the woods.
And so you got your own place. You have a lot to smile about, right?
Yeah. Through the Cup of Job and the men's Bible study, I didn't have no teeth. I wouldn't be up here right now talking, because I would not talk, because I had no bottom teeth. I had a bridge and it broke. And when I was in the woods, I didn't care. But they have come up with the funds to make me smile. Otherwise, I wouldn't be up here if I didn't have my teeth. So that's going to be another long journey. It's partial now, but I will get implants later on.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really so as you're taking steps forward, moving forward with God, you've obviously experienced a lot of pain in your past, right? You're moving forward with God now. Today we're talking about humility, and God has taught, He's humbled you a lot in your past. But what have you learned from humility?
That my humility is learning how to humble myself to accept other people's love. I was so shut down that I had to humble myself, get off my own pity story, and accept love. I had to humble myself to do that, and it's so hard when you've been shut down for so long to open up and accept love and accept, humble myself to bring the teeth up, to the Bible studies and the Cup of Job and the Lifework, and to accept that gift. I wouldn't accept anything from anybody, but to open up and ask. It's real humbling to learn how to ask for something, because I was always taught there's a long road, go get it,
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a huge lesson. One of the things you've seen is that the body of Christ has actually come together and really surrounded you with love. And so I know that there are a number of people in this room who've really impacted your life. And so, I would say that if you have been involved or engaged in Kenny's life, would you just please stand? No, probably. There's plenty more that have been helping Kenny, and so I'm just very grateful for your life and how the Christian community and the family of Christ has really come together and shown you love, and we've experienced that.
It's an awesome journey. The love there is just pushing me forward. I mean, there's no turning back now through the love of the family all the way around. It's just awesome. And the most awesome part of this journey is 2 weeks ago I adopted a little dog. I have a family of my own now. And that's moving forward with God, because I never saw myself with a dog. And that means I got to show love to have a pet like that. And it's a big part of me to move forward and have responsibility. And because living in the woods, you had no responsibility. It was very humbling to have a dog. And I love him to death.
Well, Kenny, I really appreciate you sharing your story. You've been through a lot, but you've got a huge future ahead of you. Continue to move forward with God and move forward as you're going.
Amen. God bless everybody.
Almost every day at the Cup of Joe, so if you're down that way, you'll see him working. A few things I want to point out. One of the main things we try to show you at every session are different ministries and different organizations in this city that you can serve at, give to, sponsor, donate. And I just, a couple of the guys back there, they mentioned it once or twice, but Beaches Rescue and Recovery. So that is run by one of our alumni, Jimbo Stockton. And they are doing amazing work down there. So that is something that you feel passionate about, and you hear that story and you think, hey, I want to get involved, whether that's serving or speaking